Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going over the difference between remaster and remake, and no, they are not interchangeable. So we do have so I did a small video earlier about what AAA and AA games mean, and someone asked, a viewer, hey, can you do one on remasters and remakes? So hopefully you're watching, and here it is for you. So to start, older games are sometimes, of course, redone to different degrees, and they basically resell the story. They know it's sold really well. They know it's kind of a bigger IP, so they remaster something to kind of get something quick and in the oven and out the door. And this was actually pretty common, of course, during 2020, 21, and also 22. Because again, we had, messing up with supply chains and disruptions with labor and all sorts of stuff during COVID, and it was kind of a mess. And so this isn't a new idea. This honestly, too, has been happening well before since COVID. But first, it felt like kind of a crutch during COVID, and it is still continuing to happen. We have remasters and remakes of stuff, more or less more remasters than remakes, in my opinion, because they're easier to get out the door. And we'll kind of go over why. But next publishers, honestly, they saw the money, and just in 2020 alone, we saw over 40 plus different remasters and remakes, which was crazy. We had another 40 in 2021, and then we also had another 23 in 2022, and also another 20 games in 2023. And we also had 28 of them in 2024. And so far this year in 25, we have 16 remasters and remakes. And we still have another 6 months left of the year. So what is a remaster? Well, it takes the original game and basically recovers it with new textures. So these are usually 4K textures or 1440p. Maybe a few minute changes are kind of done, but this can be done in any developer engine. And textures are basically at higher resolutions, and sometimes some items that were 2D, which they had to be back then for the build, are now also three-dimensional. So we get to see this in like the Tomb Raider remasters, or we even get to see this in Space Marine 1, Mastercrafted Edition. Models of characters, structures, and items and audio can also all be redone to a varying degree, but it's not usually huge, sometimes more than others, depending on what's going on. A really good example of this actually is the Oblivion remaster, where there was actually a ton that's actually redone again over like 20 years when the game first originally came out. And just to see the change from 20 years ago to today is truly impressive. Same too with the Tomb Raider remasters 1 through 6. But usually not all aspects are actually changed in the game. A lot of the models and a lot of kind of the base textures and layout of even the maps and stuff are basically the same. We also do have some ports, like where there's really no work done at all. It's just kind of remade into current hardware to be able to run today, and it's put out there, like the Metal Gear Solid Volume 1 collection. The games actually run worse than the originals, which is horrific. But hey, that's how it is. And so if you are going to pick that up, pick it up for cheap. Okay, but we also have Metal Gear Solid Delta, or Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, which is a remake of the original. And yeah, this is definitely completely rebuilt from the ground up. And I'll be showing that in August, toward the end there. Of course, it'll be worked in between family and work, but yeah, I am so excited to play that game. We also have Aspire, which has been remastering a whole bunch of Star Wars games, for example, but those honestly are like some of the bare minimum level of work for these remasters, because they've basically published 13 games, or no, 12 games in like 13 months. It's been very, very, very quick. Some of the better ones, like the Tomb Raider remasters, Volume 1 and 2, that I said, well, they're also done by Aspire as a publisher, but the developing studio is Saber Interactive, and these are actually really well done. There's still some issues there. There's still some tweaks that need to happen, and it's probably difficult enough to actually convert and change things and make it for current hardware anyway. When you're building it completely from the ground up as a remake, you don't really have to worry about that too much. There's also Spyro the Dragon Collection, which is a really good remaster. That actually pretty much runs flawlessly. And then there's also Oblivion remaster, remaster, and also Days Gone remaster. Both of these actually function pretty well. Sometimes there can be new content that is added to the game, but also like sometimes taking some of these older IPs and putting them into a new engine. Not everything translates super well. And Oblivion remaster is a good take on that. Sometimes there's issues with lagging and frame rate problems. There's also issues sometimes with the camera when you're riding your horse for too long, and there's other issues as well. Sometimes these usually, though, these remasters, they feel, play, and have the same jank as the original. Because, again, they're basically taking the entire product and reskinning it. That's usually the idea. So what makes a remake? Well, these, they take a look at the original, but it's completely remade. All visuals, all models, all of the level design. Usually the audio is all completely redone. They try to find the same voice actors, and it's all completely rebuilt from the ground up. Now, many times over, they, yes, generally make it pretty much the same, but everything has to be redone. So these take longer to make. The budgets for these are also a lot higher, usually, like Metal Gear Solid 3 or Silent Hill 2 would be a good example. But sometimes, too, they'll also tweak things to make it a better experience than maybe what the original was. And again, the Silent Hill 2 is a really good example of this. Silent Hill 2, to a degree, is kind of very janky and clanky with the movement, again, because this is a very old game. This is like 20 years old again, or maybe more like, somewhere between 15 and 20 years. But then with the remaster, there's also more adjustments, there's more settings there, there's less jank for stuff, but it still really holds true to kind of what we would expect with the feel and flow of the game. And it's a very fun experience. Sometimes, too, the story can be shifted and adjusted a little bit or a lot. It really depends on how they want to do it. Sometimes, too, they can make it entirely into a different genre, but usually they don't do that aspect of that because, again, they want to give what players are actually expecting. Another good example of completely, in a way, changing stuff is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So instead of turn-based, again, it's more action-based now with the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they've taken one game and split it into three, which is, I gotta say, pretty dang expensive because now you're talking 60 and then hopefully two more 70 types of games, which still equals, $200? Not to mention DLC or a little extra microtransaction bonuses they want you to buy. So yeah, $200 for the Final Fantasy VII game is pretty insane. There's also the Dead Space 1 remake, which was really, really good. Oh man, I loved that one so much. But again, that was completely built from the ground up. They changed some level design that made a little bit more sense or made it a little bit more interesting or fun for the player. But generally, everything was done exactly the same. Also, moving in space was also done differently with your rocket boots. You didn't really have rocket boots in the original one, and I don't think they could actually build that, but pretty much 95% of the game was pretty much exactly the same. And it was a very fun experience to go through it again. Also, we have Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 4. These are, again, remakes, but again, they're rebuilt completely from the ground up. They usually have less jank or less issues that you're trying to, like, copy or port over to a different type of engine, because, again, you're just completely rebuilding everything. So these usually have less issues, but unfortunately, too, they also cost more, as I said. Sometimes, I do think, though, this is important to mention, that people expect a remake level for a game, but it's a remaster. And so it's really important to see how they term it, how they label it, because that should help manage your expectations. And I think another good example is Space Marine 1. A lot of people played Space Marine 2. Hey, this is a great game. This is kind of how it plays and how it feels. And then they play Space Marine 1 and they're like, wow, what the frick is this? And again, playing it so far myself, it's pretty fun. It has some audio issues. I haven't had crashes or like weird optimization problems like some people have talked about. But again, I'm playing on Xbox. But yeah, I think people were more or less expecting completely redone models, completely redone like level design from the ground up. But that's not what this is. This is taking the original and reskinning it as a remaster. And that's what it is. That's why, too, this is also cheaper and not a full price $60 or $70 experience. So that's also a good indicator too. If they're giving you a remaster for $50 or less, it's probably, just a reskinning of the original game. Some of the jank is still going to be there. If they're selling it to you for $60 or $70 or maybe even $80 at this point, please no, I really don't want that. Then you can expect that they took all of the time in the world to completely rebuild the game from the ground up and keep it remotely the same feel and experience. So these two words, they're not completely interchangeable. They do mean different things. And they also have different quality standards going forward. So, again, I think remakes are really good, kind of risk free games to play again. But remasters, maybe take some time to watch some reviews to see how people feel about it before purchasing it yourself, unless you absolutely know you're willing to risk your money. So, with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. You can always follow me over at Gaming Garbage 22. We also have playlists there too. Don't forget to poke around. We do gaming news once a week. There's also playthroughs of stuff. There's also videos like this. And we also have like deep dives into the industry. And if you're interested, what else would you like to hear about? What other questions do you guys have? Let me hear them. Put it down in the comments, please, and I'll see if I can make some videos on those. Also, too, you can follow me at Twitch at Don't Tread on Thee. And when I'm playing video games, I'll chat with you all in the chat. So, with that, folks, hopefully you guys are having a good summer. I'll see you guys on the next one.